Claire Dumont had always been captivated by the stories of haunted places. As an architecture student from Lille, France, she was drawn to the dark history of old buildings, especially those that seemed to pulse with energy from another time. It was no surprise that, when the opportunity came to visit the famous Borley Rectory in England, she seized it. The once grand house, now reduced to crumbling ruins, was rumored to be one of the most haunted places in the country. But Claire, a skeptic by nature, dismissed the ghost stories as nothing more than fanciful folklore. History was her passion, not superstition. Arriving on a grey afternoon, Claire wandered around the perimeter of the property, her footsteps crunching on the gravel. As she admired the desolate beauty of the place, the wind rustled through the trees, but the silence was deafening, as though the house itself were holding its breath. She ventured closer to what remained of the rectory, peering into the broken windows, her camera clicking rapidly as she documented the eerie, dilapidated structure. It was while she was standing near the east wing, staring at a tangle of ivy that had overrun the stone walls, that something caught her eye. Buried under a pile of discarded bricks and debris, she noticed a small glint of gold. Kneeling down, Claire brushed away the rubble, revealing a delicate, tarnished necklace, a simple design, with a pendant that resembled an old twisted cross. It was strange. It didn't belong in this forgotten place. It seemed too personal. She picked it up cautiously, feeling a chill run through her fingers as she held the cool metal in her palm. A shiver prickled down her spine, but she quickly dismissed the sensation, shrugging it off as a result of the cold wind that had begun to pick up. After all, it was just a necklace. An antique, perhaps, but nothing more. After a brief moment of hesitation, Claire decided to keep the necklace. She placed it in her bag, thinking it might make for an interesting conversation piece back in London. As she walked back to the car, she felt a strange sense of unease settle over her. The air seemed heavier, more oppressive, and for the first time, she questioned her own skepticism. That night in her small flat in London, Claire placed the necklace on her nightstand. As she lay in bed trying to shake off the eerie feeling, sleep finally claimed her. But her dreams were anything but peaceful. The next morning, Claire woke up feeling wrong. It wasn't exhaustion exactly, but a dull pressure behind her eyes, as if she hadn't truly slept. The details of her dream were murky, like smoke she couldn't grasp. All she remembered was a long hallway, narrow, dimly lit, and a figure at the end of it, unmoving. A woman in black. Her face was blurred, like it had been wiped clean. Shaking it off, Claire went about her day. She had classes at the university and lectures to attend, but something was off. Her phone glitched twice during the morning, skipping songs and freezing on black screens. At one point during a seminar, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, and for the briefest second, she swore it blinked out of sync with her. That night back in her flat, the unease deepened. She lived alone in a narrow fourth-floor apartment just outside Shoreditch. It was old but cozy, tall windows, wooden floors that creaked when she walked, and a view of the streetlights glowing soft amber below. She made tea, opened her laptop to review her photos from the Borley Rectory visit, and paused. There it was, in the corner of one frame, a blurry shape. At first she thought it was a camera error, a light flare or dust smear. But the more she looked, the clearer it became. A silhouette in the shadows behind one of the ruined archways, standing too tall and too still. She zoomed in, no face, just darkness where her head should be. Claire slammed the laptop shut. She tried to distract herself with reading, with music, anything. But around midnight, the lights flickered twice. Then again. At first she blamed the old wiring. It was London, after all, but the timing felt intentional. Her hallway light clicked on by itself, even though the switch was off. She stood up, heart pounding, and stepped cautiously toward it. The floorboard beneath her groaned. And then came the sound. 3 knocks. Clear, slow, hollow. They came from her bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. She froze, breath caught in her throat. No one else was home. Her flat was locked. The corridor outside was empty. Yet the knocks had been unmistakable, deliberate. Claire whispered, "Hello?" Silence. She reached for her phone, but the screen was black, dead. She hadn't noticed the battery was low. Gathering her nerve, she pushed the bedroom door open fully. Nothing. Only her neatly made bed, the closed window, the faint hum of the street beyond. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding and turned to leave when she noticed it. On the mirror above her dresser, faint and fogged from condensation, were the smeared outlines of letters. R-E-T-U-R-N. She hadn't taken a shower. There was no reason for condensation. Claire stumbled back, pulse hammering in her ears. She looked around the room wildly. Everything else was the same except the necklace. It was gone from the nightstand. She found it under her pillow. Claire didn't sleep that night. The next few days blurred into a haze of unease. Claire began avoiding mirrors. She kept the lights on at night and jumped at every creak in the floorboards. Her friends noticed the change in her pale complexion, the way she glanced over her shoulder too often, the dark circles forming under her eyes. When they asked, she smiled and said she was tired, overworked, but in truth, she couldn't stop thinking about the necklace. It was always there, no matter where she tried to leave it. Once, she dropped it into the bottom drawer of her desk and locked it. The next morning, it was sitting on the kitchen counter. She flushed it down the toilet in a moment of desperation and found it resting on her pillow that evening, dry as bone. It was no longer curiosity. It was fear. Claire turned to the archives at her university. The Borley Rectory had a long, tangled history, most of it shrouded in rumor, superstition, and conflicting accounts. She pored through microfilm, old news clippings, and a few rare books from the restricted section. One name came up again and again, Sister Eleanor. The stories were always similar. In the late 19th century, a nun had fallen in love with a monk from a nearby monastery. When their secret affair was discovered, the punishment had been brutal. The monk was executed. Eleanor was sealed alive within the walls of the rectory as penance. No burial, no final rites, only stone and silence. Locals believed her soul had never moved on. They said her ghost, the nun without a face, roamed the halls, searching for something lost. One entry caught Claire's eye, a short paragraph from a 1904 journal written by a priest who had briefly lived at the rectory. She appears only when the relic is disturbed. I have never seen her with my eyes, but I've heard the knocking. 3 times, always at 3. She wants it returned. The cruciform pendant? It's cursed. Or perhaps it's cursed by what it remembers. Claire's blood ran cold. The pendant. The same twisted cross now lying on her bedside table. That night her dreams returned. She was standing at the end of the same corridor, long, narrow, impossibly dim. The walls seemed to close in as she walked. At the far end, Eleanor stood, her hands clasped in front of her, her habit draped in tatters, her face still lost in shadows. But this time she moved. She raised one hand and pointed directly at Claire. When Claire woke, her hands were bleeding. Faint scratch marks trailed down her forearms, as though she'd clawed at herself in her sleep. The necklace rested on her chest. Claire began keeping every light on in her flat, even during the day. She barely left. The outside world felt distant, unreal, like a memory she was slipping away from. She covered her mirrors, unplugged her television, removed the batteries from her smoke alarm after it began, shrieking randomly every night at exactly 3 o'clock. But none of it helped. The knocks continued. Always 3, always slow. Always from just beyond the door. Sometimes when she lay in bed trying not to breathe too loudly, she could hear it. Not just the knocking, but the rustle of fabric, the drag of bare feet across her floor, like someone pacing, waiting, and sometimes, whispering, a woman's voice, soft French but distorted, like it came from underwater. Tu l'as pris. Tu ne peux pas fuir. You took it. You cannot run. Claire stopped answering calls. She stopped going to class. Her professors began sending emails, but she ignored them. She barely ate. The only thing she could think about was the necklace and the presence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing night. One evening, the silence shattered. It was nearly 2 in the morning. Claire was in the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone, though her flat had no mold, no visible cause. As she reached for a towel, the overhead light exploded. Glass rained down, slicing her cheek. She screamed and stumbled back. Then she heard it from the hallway. Heavy, wet breathing. She stepped out slowly, heart thudding. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and at the far end of the corridor, near the front door, a figure stood, draped in black, hands at her sides, head lowered. Claire's breath caught. The figure began to move forward, one step, then another. No sound but the creak of the floor beneath her. Claire turned and ran, slamming her bedroom door shut. She pushed a chair under the handle and backed away, trembling. For a long time there was nothing, just silence. And then, tap, 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 3 soft knocks on the other side. She sobbed quietly in the corner of her room until morning. When sunlight finally bled through the window, she checked the hallway. Empty, but etched into the front door, carved into the wood, were 4 words. Bring it back, alone. Claire left London just before dusk. She didn't tell anyone. She packed only a flashlight, her notebook, a canister of salt she had read about in a paranormal forum, and the necklace, now wrapped tightly in cloth. The weight of it in her bag felt unbearable, as if it grew heavier the closer she got to where it came from. The road to Borley was shrouded in mist, the countryside silent, except for the occasional cry of a distant bird. When she arrived, the ruins looked even more skeletal than before. Hollow windows, cracked stone. The sky above hung heavy with clouds that didn't move. She stepped through the rusted gate, every sound swallowed by the stillness. Her flashlight flickered as she passed the east wing. It was colder here, unnaturally so. The air didn't feel like wind. It felt like something watching. Claire followed the same path she had walked weeks earlier, but this time she knew where she was going. She stepped through the rusted gate, every sound swallowed by the stillness. Her flashlight flickered as she passed the east wing. It was colder here, unnaturally so. The air didn't feel like wind. It felt like something watching. Claire followed the same path she had walked weeks earlier, but this time she knew where she was going. In one of the texts she had read, an account mentioned a sealed chamber beneath the rectory, used to punish and conceal shameful secrets. And secrets, she had learned, never stayed buried. She found it behind the collapsed hearth, a narrow, jagged hole partially hidden under overgrowth. The flashlight beam shivered as she stepped inside. It was a short descent into damp stone, and the deeper she went, the harder it became to breathe. The air was thick with mildew and something older, darker, something wrong. At the base of the tunnel, she found a space carved into the earth. The walls were black with soot and scratched with what looked like fingernail marks. A single rotted beam jutted from the far wall, beneath which lay a pile of stones arranged like a makeshift grave. Claire didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, unwrapped the necklace and placed it gently on the stones. "Je suis désolée," she whispered. "I'm sorry." The moment it touched the rocks, the temperature dropped. Her flashlight died. Then behind her came the sound of movement. Not footsteps, dragging. Claire turned, just in time to see a shape emerge from the darkness. Robes in tatters, a face still hidden in shadow but hands now visible, pale, wet and reaching. Claire froze. The figure stopped. No words, no motion, just watching. And then it turned away and vanished. No screams, no attack, just the sudden oppressive silence of something ancient letting go. Claire stumbled out of the tunnel just as the sky began to lighten. She felt lighter, yes, but not free. Something had been returned, but something else had changed. Back in London, she finally slept for the first time in weeks. But in the quiet of the early morning, her phone buzzed, a notification from her camera roll. A photo had been added. She opened it. It was a shot of her, asleep in her bed taken from inside her room. And in the corner of the frame, a shadowed figure stood, barely visible, but watching. Smiling. Some things should be left buried, but not all stories stay silent. If you've ever brought something home from a forgotten place, make sure it didn't follow you. Have you ever experienced something like this? Share your story. You might not be the only one.